Sorry, are there any further apologies? No. Item 2 then, any declarations of interest? Councillor Richard McRae, Councillor Ryan Skinner.
Yeah, item 5.5, which is a registered interest as the chair of Stapleford Community Group, so I will leave the room while you discuss that one.
Mine's the same.
Right.
Oh, you're my community group?
No, not yours.
Councillor Skinner, what was your interest in
Hello.
item
Which item is it on?
5 point? Yeah.
The Chilwell one.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair,
Sorry, Councillor.
and I'll ask the question as I always do. Branket Leisure Centre, my daughter does work there
Yes,
and has done for a number of years. So
yes. Can we I'll confirm it with the legal officer, but in my opinion, yes, you do have a direct interest in that, and so I'll ask you to leave the room at that stage.
yeah, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Straight on then to agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February 2026, are set out on pages 5 to 14. Are we agreed that they are a true, correct record? Agreed. Moving on then to item 4, which is scrutiny reviews, set out on pages 15 to 18. We've also got the chair of scrutiny committee here tonight. So these pages don't correspond correctly with the agenda items. So it's actually page 16, whereas page 17. Sorry, scrutiny reviews. So scrutiny reviews on pages 17 to 20. And so chair of scrutiny, Councillor Sean Danaheim is here. Anything you wish to raise within the scrutiny report?
Thank you, Chair. No, not really, because there's not much happened since last time. Our next meeting, which is on the 26th, will be taking suggestions for scrutiny for the 26-27.
Okay, thank you. All noted. Any questions or comments? Duly noted. Moving on then to item 5.1, which is the update on local government reorganisation, set out on pages 19 to 28 on your agenda list. That actually starts on page 21 to page 30. Again, it's a noting report. I'll go first of all to the Chief Executive and then to Mr Philip Sutlow, who will be presenting the update on the LGR report.
Thank you, Chair. This is our regular report to Cabinet on progress with LGR. It sets out some of the history around the key steps and then outlines what happens next post-consultation in terms of the decision from the Minister and then the structural change order. As members will be aware, we're in the middle of a consultation period and we've organised a specific separate meeting for the group leaders next Monday to go through the consultation to get a consolidated response to go into MHCLG. Thank you. I'll hand over to Phil for any further details. Thank you.
Mr Phil Sutlow.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's not a lot more to add to what the Chief Exec's already said. We are in the consultation phase. The consultation phase is not administered by us. It is the government that are running the consultation. We are providing support on making sure it's communicated out to the public and the organisations within the borough and within Nottinghamshire. We are expected to provide a response before the 26th of March 2026. As the Chief Exec's already highlighted, is we do have a meeting next week to discuss the responses to that consultation. We are expected to receive a decision on one of the 3 proposals, a minded 2 decision, before the summer recess for government, which we are expecting in July 2026.
Thank you very much for the update. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Richard McRae first.
Yeah, just 2 things. I've seen here it says the vesting day is April Fool's Day 2028, so you've got to be a fool to support it, haven't you? But joking aside, I'd just like to thank Councillor Donna McRae and Councillor Stephen Jeremiah, who took a proposal to Stapleford Town Council last night, which was supported, and they've said they support Broxton Borough Council in saying that they don't support the LGR. So thank you to all the councillors who did that as well. But it just shows the strength in Broxton, doesn't it, that people don't support this. and we just need the MP to listen to people and get behind it as well, get behind that people are saying no to it instead of just being quiet on it. So I just wanted to thank the town council because they've said they support what we're doing here at Broxtowe. I think that's kind of what it was, wasn't it? So yeah, that was it really. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Owen?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. It's useful to have these update reports, which I asked for initially, and I think they've proved to be useful. And I acknowledge that we are having a briefing next Monday. And this is only a noting report, but I think, and I don't know whether you're able to expand any further on this, that there are still a number of unanswered points. The first observational comment I would make is that the government consultation is absolutely appalling. It really is shocking, the documentation. It's geared for only those people really who can do it online, and even then it's not easy. It leads you to answer in the way that they want you to answer. It's not a true consultation. It doesn't, it just says, here you are, this is what we're offering to you, take it or leave it, whichever one you want. And that's it basically. And they don't even do it as simply as that. They wrap it up in a vast array of questions and comment. But moving on, Chairman, if the government are minded to say this is our preferred option or whatever terminology they use, and you are, and whichever one of the three that they may decide to go with involves Broxtowe being subsumed into the city, what is going to be our position at the point at which they say this is the option that we are preferred, and we may send out a further useless consultation to get your backing? What are Broxtowe going to do? Have we thought that through? Have we got plans lined up as to what we might be able to do? Because it does concern me that that doesn't come out in this noting report. Moving on, if we have to go into this arrangement, or whichever one it is, elections are going to take place next year, so we're told, for a shadow authority. We're not going to get a decision until the beginning of summer. The whole of summer is going to be out, so nothing really is going to be taking place until September. How are the areas going to be divided up into wards or divisions? What's going to be the basis for that, and what say will we have in that? And my third general point is, what are going to be the interim arrangement? The vesting day is May, is it April 2028? The shadow council will be elected next May, and then there's a period of 12 months. What's going to fill that 12-month period? There was talk originally that elections wouldn't go ahead for those authorities that are involved in local government reorganisation. But we've seen the outcry, certainly from one led by one party in particular, although I accept that my party leader has said that she wants elections to go ahead. I might be in trouble with my party leader going forward, because a year, to me, is that the intention, that the election should be cancelled? Or are we going to have elections for the residuary body, for want of a better term, the residuary Broxtowe Borough Council, that are going to serve just for 1 year? So I think there are a number of points there. I don't know whether you can give me answers tonight.
Yeah, I'll let Chief Executive answer
Yep.
first.
Yeah.
The meeting's taking place this afternoon at County Hall.
Yeah.
And we'll just...
I'll pick up some of those detailed questions around the elections and how that works. Essentially, the structural change order is a key document that outlines exactly each key step around the establishment of the executive, interim executive, and the shadow council. So that'll outline exactly the wards and the election range for the shadow election in 2027. There's an expectation that existing borough councils will roll on for one more year. Now, what you're referring to is what happened across the country in 30 different councils, where initially there was a view that those borough councils would roll on for 2 years, but that was the government did a U-turn and said that's not how they proceed, and they're actually going to pursue the election in those particular areas. But our working assumption is we have shadow elections next year, we don't have borough elections, and existing borough councillors roll another year until April 28. What was your initial question was about? Can you repeat the first question? I forgot what it was.
I was asking, have we got a contingency plan? Because any of the options that the government might try to impose upon us, we have rejected as a council, not just us, the electorate here, the residents here overwhelmingly have rejected what's on offer. What are we going to do about it?
I'll answer that question specifically myself. Whatever happens as a result of the consultation, and what Broxtowe said is we are not opposed to local government reorganisation. What we are opposed to is local government reorganisation simply on terms of numbers and financial. We want government reorganisation to be about services and service delivery and prioritising. Whichever option is imposed upon Broxtowe against the will of Broxtowe residents, then we have, in my opinion, a moral responsibility to ensure that whatever system of new council is, that we represent to the best of our ability the interests of Broxtowe residents. And that, to me, is a solemn responsibility. Now, people misunderstand ours and indeed my position on local government reorganisation. It's simply that, you know, I want to see the people benefit from a local government that delivers for local people. And when we've carried out consultations, people have specifically stated right across that they do not want to be part of an expanded city. Now, I've respected that. Whether you agree with my position is irrelevant. It's the wishes of the people. However, if the wishes of the people are being overturned to the national level, then it is my belief that I and the rest of my colleagues and the council have a responsibility to ensure the transitional arrangements are in the best interests of the borough residents, and we do the best that we can to ensure protection of services and the protection of delivery of services to all our communities. That is my response to you. And I believe that we have that solemn and that moral responsibility to ensure. But not just about services, it's also about our staff as well. It's about the lands that we manage, the housing stock, or the tenants that we have, people in need, our parks, our recreation areas. It's about not just about moving things from one side to another. It's about how those arrangements work in the best interest of people we represent and is fair and transparent to the staff and those people whose jobs we will be seeking to protect. If anybody disagrees with me, now's the time to say so. I'm in a very conciliatory mood tonight, so it might be a good time to try and get something.
I have to say I find that response understandable, but a little disappointing. We have never come up with an alternative proposal for local government reorganisation, which I thought was a mistake. And so from what you're saying, we're now going to roll over and just accept what is imposed upon us.
No.
And I find that bitterly disappointing.
Correct you. I never said that. From the outset of local government reorganisation, I put forward on behalf of Broxtowe Borough Council a number of other solutions that were refused by Nottinghamshire, Nottingham City, Nottinghamshire County. That included, and government as well, as looking at cross-border. The arrangements, for instance, between Erywash, Broxtowe, Erywash, Ashfield, Broxtowe, Ashfield, So there were a number of options pursued. They were all rejected at county level. And I suggested at that time that the solutions that they were putting forward were not in the interests of Broxtowe residents, ever. Doesn't mean we're going to roll over at all. What it means is that we have, if it's imposed upon us, we have a responsibility to the public and to our staff to ensure the transitional arrangements are in their best interests, and that we do all we can to protect jobs and services from potential cuts, or as they like to describe it in terms of being largely about numbers, about management in numbers. We're talking about local delivery and local services. So that for me is the attitude that I take, that the moral responsibility that we have to staff and residents far outweighs my own personal beliefs. And that's what I take very seriously as a councillor. Sorry, did you want to come in on that, Councillor Bond?
Yeah, thank you. It was just to pick up on that point that was made about why didn't we submit our own plan, which is something we've talked about multiple times, but maybe it's worth reiterating for those that don't remember. But as you said there, like, we did push for multiple other options. There was an option where it was Gedling and Rushcliffe that would be going in with the city rather than Broxtowe. There was another option which did look at the one that you preferred, Councillor Owen, about the idea of a united Nottinghamshire around the city in the middle. There was also some discussion about, smaller unitary authorities, which was my preferred position, and that's what I thought, if we had to go with this thing, that's what I would have thought would have been a much better approach. Those all got ruled out. That's why we wrote to them repeatedly to ask for permission to submit an alternate proposal that didn't meet the criteria outlined in the white paper, which we were told, basically there's no point wasting your money because these things did cost like hundreds of thousands of pounds, and we didn't want to spend taxpayers' money putting together development that we'd already been told wouldn't be accepted anyway. But that's why it was so frustrating when right at the end, that's exactly what the City Council did, and then that has been allowed to go onto this consultation. That they clearly got told something different to us, and that they did go ahead, spend, I think it was about 150,000 that they spent on putting their proposal together. They did submit that, and that's been allowed to go into consideration. So that's a frustration, because if we had got that assurance that working up our own proposal and spending taxpayer money on putting that together would at least mean it would be onto the consultation and be considered, then we would have looked at it differently. Like, there's a reason why we made the decisions we did at the time. The frustration with this process is that they keep changing the goalposts, they keep changing what they're saying. They say one thing to someone, and then they clearly say another thing to someone else. And that comes back to the core of my question, is that one thing that we talked about was, the fact that the City Council proposal was accepted, a complaint about that process, because clearly they've been given different guidance, different information, and different pathways to those offered to us, making it like a fundamentally unfair process in the way that it's been managed for Nottinghamshire councils. And so there was some discussion about submitting a formal complaint, and I just wondered if we could have an update on whether that's been done, and if not, what's happening around that plan.
We've looked very carefully at whether or not that would be subject to judicial review. The advice that we received back from council is that wouldn't be justifiable under judicial review. However, there is still a complaints procedure that we can follow. But if I can draw your attention back to right when this started, one of the first options, of course, was a unitary county with no city. And that was put forward to a meeting of Nottinghamshire leaders at the very first meeting that we had. And that was rejected on the grounds that it was unworkable. That was literally going back to pre-1992, how it used to be done. Hopefully we've come a long way since then. But certainly, in my opinion, there is a moral obligation, if it's imposed upon us, to ensure that we do the best that we can to protect services and protect jobs in Broxtowe to the benefit of our residents and our staff. Any further questions or comments? If not, then you ask to note the report, and we'll look forward to the meeting on Monday with a great deal of interest. Item 5.2 tonight, set out on pages 31 to 104, is the review of corporate plan progress and financial performance data. What I'm going to plan to do with this is that there are as I say, a lot of pages, but you're asked to note the progress made in achieving corporate plan priorities. But to go through them individually on page by page will probably take us all night. There are a number of issues that you may raise as we go through. I'll try and take them section by section. If you wish to make any comments, please do so. If you wish to ask any questions, please indicate clearly as I move through the papers. Are there any questions or comments, therefore, starting on page 31, which is the narrative, which goes on from pages 31 through to page 32, and then appendix 1A starts off with performance management, and that starts on page 33. Any questions or comments on appendix 1A? No? Sorry, the next...
We're on page 37 for housing critical success
yeah,
indicators.
sorry, I beg your pardon.
That's all right.
I'm trying my best to follow this paper. So on to page 37 then, which is the first of the housing critical success indicators. Any questions or comments? Next one is business growth, critical success indicators set out on pages 48 on your tonight's agenda. Any questions or comments? Councillor McGrath.
Yes, Chair. I have one. I think myself and Councillor McRae have raised it a number of times, to be fair. I'm still concerned about as you can see, we're way down the occupancy in Stapleford. I'm still concerned that it's downward. And I think with the amount of, money we've had, which we're very pleased to have, I think there should be a bit of a drive towards at least trying to get some of the units occupied. I know we're working hard around the pencil works, but it seems to be the same shops or retail units that are not empty or are empty or never filled. So it becomes and I'd like to thank the council for what we've done with the Old Rock and, as I called it, the Budgerigar shop, which has been opposite Larry's, right, which has been used and being utilised now. But I just hope that we can have some kind of drive, because we might have a brand new pencil works with, and I'll say it bluntly, a dead looking town. But that's just one of my comments.
Can we just pick up the issue with you about Stapleford in particular, and what you've talked about there is the appalling state of the former pub there on the corner. You know that we've now made the suggestion and bid to the Minister for funding to buy that site and to develop it on behalf of the borough. Yes. One of the big issues around that has been the dereliction and the site, general appearance of untidiness. It's a major feature of Gateway into Stapleford, and it gives the appearance of a town that's unnecessarily wrong. It's not run down. It's not poor in fact that it's full of charity shops, and it's a good combination of shops in the town. But when you look along that Gateway feature, the first thing you see is the state and dereliction of that place, looking an absolute disgrace. Now the council's taken strong and decisive action to get that site up and running and developed. And consequently, I expect to see improvement within the town centre once that major Gateway site is cleared up and completed and finished and sold off. I expect to see a big improvement within the town centre. Okay?
Thank you, Chair. But just on that, would it be good that within the economic development group that we had shall we say, a dedicated, because we have got a good team, and I'm being honest, that we had a dedicated. I mean, for example, Milan, I know that are you allowed to say bakers or? I know that there's two good bakers in two certain towns within our area. We're losing one of the. Well, I won't comment about it, but we're losing one.
Yeah.
Saturday, isn't it, Richard? Saturday, I think they're moving out.
Yeah.
There's no replacement. It becomes a knock-on effect, not just for the council of Stapleford, but also us. as if we haven't spent the money correctly. That's all. And it's just if we had a a dedicated unit just to try and get people in and entice them in. I mean, we only have to look at Hickins Lane and see how fantastic that's been and still is growing from day to day. That when we concentrate on certain areas where we are declined a bit, i.e. the footfall within the town, we seem to get an improvement. That's all, Miller.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I understand that, but I'm just saying that the strong and decisive action that's taken over that derelict site will, in my opinion, improve the appearance and gateway of Stapleford and make it much more viable than having that huge mess on the corner that really does put people off and gives an indication of dereliction. I'm looking forward to seeing it successfully developed and taken up. Okay, any further questions or comments on the economic development science? Okay, on page 52 then, on tonight's programme, we start on the preparation of of neighbourhood plans. Is there anything you want to add to this at this stage, Mark? No. Any questions or comments on this section?
54 environment next.
Yeah, and if not, then we move on to environmental critical success indicators, starting on page 54. Any questions or comments on that section? Councillor Richard McRae.
Yeah. Can I just thank the environment team for the recent tidy up day that they did in, well, a little bit was in Trowbridge, but it was in Stapleford as well. That they're always successful, and I think when they do them up at Montrose Court, the amount of residents that actually come out and help, because people do struggle to get there sometimes because they haven't got vehicles and that. But we've got people that's got different issues up there. They're quite lonely and that, and they stay in their houses and all the time. No, social isolation, I think they call it. They actually come out on them days and to see how busy the estate is, and it's absolutely buzzing. So it's just a big thank you, because the guys from the council do a cracking job. The team are brilliant. But I think a thank you to the residents as well, because they go around knocking on people's doors and dragging everything out. So it'd be nice to, I don't know, we might see some figures somewhere, I don't know, how much stuff was collected, because the days are brilliant, they really are. So just a big thank you to the environment team for that, and yeah, let's do some more another day.
I'll just ask while Emma's in from Environment tonight, I've just sent out the figures from the collection for members. That would be useful, I think. Make that available.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, I saw that.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. Any further questions or comments on
Yes.
environment?
Yes, Chair, just a quick, and again, well, it must be about Stafford again. Just a quick one, again, mate, is that obviously we're aware that Archers Field didn't achieve the awards, and are we any further on with what we plan to do with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, through you, Chair. We've just started to revise with the consultants the play strategy, so that will be picked up through that piece of work.
So it's underway. We're looking at it already. We're already designing it.
And just on that, Millen, because in another life I was a county councillor or whatever I was, right? But in another life we did have meetings, Emma, concerning at the bottom of Archers Field, right? Which was many years ago, a frog pond or whatever it was, and we walked round. It is a way, if we can get the county involved, I think I emailed you, it is a way of reducing the water going on to Bessel Lane, which is still a problem and has been for many years. But before all that was built, Emma, there used to be a massive pond at the bottom of Archers Field, because obviously it goes down like that, and it might help if we got environment agency involved there, just to see if there's any kind of barrier, stroke, whatever we could do. Thank you.
We'll do that.
Through you, Chair. So, Councillor McGrath, I've copied you in on an email because I'm trying to arrange a meeting with SATBAG and the Environment Agency, yourself, and other ward members, and I think and the County Council's the lead flood authority, to discuss these issues, and I'll sort that out for you. But I've not had any dates come back yet.
Thank you, Emma.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? I can move on to page 63 then, which is starts on the health key task areas for improvement. Any questions or comments?
Community safety 66.
No? If not, then can we move on to the next part, which is the community safety critical success indicators, starting on page 66. Any questions or comments? And following on from last council, you'll know that we've extended the PSPO area in Beeston as well. The public protection order. Public safety protection, or PSPO. Yeah, sorry. So that's now been agreed. I presume you've no. Okay. Well, that. Pardon? Nearly agreed. Well, let's stick with nearly agreed. And then, sorry, next part is on to page 74, which deals specifically with the support services, key tasks and areas for improvement. Any questions or comments? If not, we move on to page 95, which is Appendix 2, which is financial performance to December 2025, quarter 3. Any questions or comments, Councillor Owen? Do you want to raise a question?
I just wanted clarification on the table, the bottom line, the grand total. We start the left-hand side with the budget salary of 22,294 million.
Yeah.
And then when we include the agency costs, it comes to 23 million, just over. The budget December 25, is that the revised budget at that time?
That's 9/12.
That's 9/12. That's what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I wanted to establish.
quarter 3.
Okay, fine, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, quarter 3. Fine.
Perfect.
Any further questions or comments? If not, before I return back to the
It's a noting report, so.
to the noting report, can I just take the opportunity to say, if you read these papers carefully, and these have been gone through in great detail by myself and the deputy leader, indicate a remarkable amount of progress within the authority, in particular the actions around corporate priorities. I'd like to thank all those members and staff involved, as well. Some of our staff, I say, they've done remarkably well, and I want to place on record my sincere thanks, and I hope that progress will continue throughout the remainder of the borough's financial year and into next year. So a big thank you to all our staff. I promise to be a little bit easier on you next quarter. No, I don't. Right, so we move on then to item 5.3, which is council tax support for terminally ill residents. Mr. Sudlow's here tonight to introduce this report and to take us through some of the details, but the resolution on page 105, I move from the chair.
I'll second that.
Over to you now.
Chair. Yeah. How can you give a crumb of comfort to something so tragic? So obviously the situation is, of course, a desperate one for, for many of our residents who face, terminal illness and the prospects of that. And what we're trying to do here is just try and extend some support as an authority in those desperate times. So in that sense, despite the kind of context, we're hoping this is received positively as a good intervention from us as an authority. We do, of course, apply discretion to other areas of council tax support across our local council tax support scheme, which is discretionary, and for instance, could include, the war pension. And war widow disregard. So we do have that ability, and we do that in other areas. And this is I guess a positive adjunct to those council tax supports as well. So I fully support the recommendations 1 through to 4, which has been through the policy overview working group as well, and helped steer the final recommendation to include those other final 2 recommendations, but I fully support them all, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Mr Sutherland?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Councillor Marshall's kind of already alluded to, it has been through the policy overview and working group, and they recommended points 3 and 4 be added to the process. But fundamentally, what those will do is they will look at how we can expand this scheme further down the line to incorporate those that are not on council tax support, and also trying to incorporate it within our local council tax support scheme, which has implications from a financial point of view for the authority. Just to give a bit of an overview though for members is our local council tax support scheme is already one of the most generous in the country, based upon the old council tax benefit regulations, so as we will pay up to a maximum of 100% award based upon someone's banding. In that also goes up to the band H as well. So this scheme specifically is going to target those, obviously, as Councillor Marshall's identified, with a member of the household who is terminally ill and receiving local council tax support. The policy does state that a life expectancy is under 12 months. So just a quick overview on that is that it would only be open to residents who are already receiving local council tax support. It would require clinician support. We have a form, an SR1 form, that would be required to be completed. And this is going to be solely funded by Broxtowe Borough Council. It's funded under the Section 13A of the Local Government Finance Act, which means that we can create discretionary schemes to support residents, and that means that it will be fully supported and fully funded by Broxtowe and not the other precepting authorities such as Nottinghamshire County Council or the police or the fire. We've done some estimations on this because of the fact that we've already got a very generous local council tax support scheme. It's probably going to cost us anywhere between £10,000 and £15,000 per year. But as we look to expand the scheme further in future years, we could potentially increase that spend. So at the moment, we're asking members to obviously implement the scheme from the 1st of April 26, delegate the decision making to officers, and then look to expand it into the current local council tax support scheme, and consider the process of a future outside of the council tax support scheme. But happy to take any questions that members might have.
Any questions or comments? Councillor Bond.
Yeah, just a very quick comment. So I'm the Vice Chair of the Policy Working Group, and I think this was a really good example of a very good discussion and sort of getting to unpick some of the complexities and go through them before this came to Cabinet. And that's noted in the points 3 and 4 that were added in terms of sort of the future development of this policy, and also how, already started to shape how that discussion might work out and how we make sure that it's well managed and it's done in a proportionate way. But the other thing that I just wanted to mention is that I was part of a discussion recently around sort of various councils and the decisions that they're making around council tax support. And there was someone talking about the fact that their council has made the decision where they're not giving any support. The maximum support they will give is up to 50% for anyone, no matter what their circumstances are. And I think it's really important that we note that we are, through being a well-managed council and through sort of the decisions that have been made here on a longer term, we're in a position where we're able to do this, and that it should be noted, and we should be proud of ourselves for doing that. This is a really difficult position for individuals to be in. Being able to take one of the pressures off people and give them that bit of flexibility so they can focus on the real priorities at this point, is a good thing to be able to do as a council. And like I say, but that is not the case everywhere across the country. There are a lot of other councils that are not in the position that we are, where we're able to make that support and make those choices. And I think that is worth noting, that the management of this council is something that has made that possible. And it's good to see. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. You're aware this, the guidance originally came from Marie Curie regarding local council tax support scheme for terminal residents, which is something that we've done, and others are now looking at Broxtowe's model to implement within their own area. And unfortunately, I've already made reference to Mr Sudlow of people with terminal illnesses that have contacted me, which they've already received payments of. So I'm, again, delighted to support this and reiterate, this is probably the best local council tax support scheme in the country. And there's an example here for Nottinghamshire County Council, the police and the fire authorities to also offer a council tax support scheme for people with terminal illness as well. Because at the moment the burden falls on Broxtowe, and it's only the Broxtowe element of our council tax that we can support. However, I think particularly people with terminally ill, as in less than, defined by terminal as in less than 12 months, then I think the county council and the police and the fire should also give the same council discretionary discount as well. It's just a pity that it all falls on district councils and others don't accept their responsibility as seriously as we do. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Owen?
Yes, Chairman, I've no problems with the principle at all. And I note that it will be an officer decision. I presume the requirement will be some indication from the person concerned's GP hospital that will make that an equitable decision, because I think that's important. And the other issue, I thought you said that it was only going to be applicable to those who are already on a discretionary scheme. That seems to me to be a little unfair. I would have hoped that anybody, if we're introducing this scheme, that has been determined to be terminally ill with 12 months or less to live, would have been able to benefit from this scheme.
Through you, Chair, I fully understand the questions raised there. To kind of start with the one at the end, it's linked to the council tax support scheme on the basis that this report's come from the Marie Curie research that's been done, and it's people who have passed away whilst in poverty. So what we've done is looked at those that are probably on the lowest incomes within our area, and they are most likely to be receiving council tax support. So that's why we've linked it together with council tax support at this moment in time. What we have had the discussion with the policy overview and working group is how we expand that further, and how we deal with that without exposing the council to significant expenditure that's unsustainable to an extent. So that's why we're kind of looking at that, and that's something that we were hoping to bring in maybe in April 2027 for those that maybe don't receive council tax support but are only just missing out on it, so that we can provide that support in some way. The problem that we've got with that is that we don't have the information available to make that calculation. If, just to put it into context, if we did look at it just on the basis of what the NHS trusts have provided us with information, is this scheme could cost us, just for providing any support to terminally ill residents, could cost the authority up to £1 million worth of expenditure each year. So that's why we've tried to limit it down to those that we feel meet what Marie Curie were kind of looking at to an extent in what they've researched, but then looking to build upon that as we've gone through the coming years, so to speak.
A particular reference was drawn to those who just fail. You know, poverty is defined by almost a line. You're either on benefits and receipt or you're not. What's suggested, and obviously the suggestion originally came from myself to the working group, that we take a look at those who just don't quite meet the criteria in benefits but are equally in need. And that will take some time to look at the statistics, it will take some analysis, but it sets us a year's timetable to produce a working report to look at the implications and how we can extend that to people in the wider community who don't qualify for necessarily under the benefit system, but fall under the poverty category yet nonetheless. That was just trying to cover that grey area. Councillor Blunt.
And just to come in very quickly, there was also the opposition that we didn't want to delay support for those that are most clearly in need, so getting this stage of it through immediately or as quickly as possible, and therefore we were able to get support for those very quickly. But that's why we have point 3 on here that looks, specifically notes that we are going to look at those further steps to make sure that it's in place.
Thank you very much, sir. Any further questions or comments? So the press reported in the bank notice that Broxtowe is probably the best council tax support scheme in the whole of the country. So thanks to all members for your continuing support, especially at budget, except for those who abstained or voted against. So we can move on to, the recommendation for council tax support scheme has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? And for the record, that is unanimously agreed. Moving on then to item 5.4, which is the ethical considerations for the pension fund investments, treasury management activity and banking services, are set out on pages 119 to 122. The recommendations start on page 119 and go over the table to page 120. I'll move that from the chair.
I second that.
And straight away over to Councillor Greg Marshall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We see this as an important agenda item on tonight's cabinet to address the ongoing humanitarian disaster which is in Palestine at the minute, and indeed the genocide which is taking place for the Palestinian people. Obviously, in recent weeks, it's been the scandal has been overtaken by the illegal war in Iran at the minute. But just for the avoidance of doubt, there are daily bombing raids in Gaza, which are killing innocent men, women, and children, particularly children. 37% of all deaths within Gaza are children and infants, which is almost the only single definition you need of an ongoing genocide in that part of the world. And in that sense, I think that we have to demonstrate what we can do as an authority from thousands of miles away to, one, I recognise the crisis and see what we can do in practical terms to try and address that. There are some, of course, who say it's got nothing to do with us. I don't believe that. I don't agree with that. I don't agree that if we are indeed using services or benefiting from pension schemes or procuring from organisations which directly trade and indeed support fundamentally regimes which carry out such atrocities, then we should do all we can within our gift to try and address that. And fundamentally, that is what this cabinet paper talks about. It talks about what pressure we can apply through the pooling of the pooling of local government pension schemes and the local government pension fund pool that we are within, to talk about how we assure ourselves that those producing weapons, particularly military industrial complex producing weapons and supporting Israel, how do they address that issue as part of the pension scheme. It also talks about, of course, services that we procure as an authority and indeed services that we use as an authority as well. This is an important issue, and this issue is not going away. This is an important issue that we're concerned about for residents, and I just see this alongside, for instance, support that we provide for Ukraine and initiatives that we've done for Ukraine as being our way of demonstrating that we give solidarity with people who are being oppressed. So I move the report, Chair, and all the recommendations under section 2 in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Before I go to questions or comments, this is a widely held view across other authorities across the country, and indeed in Nottinghamshire. Even Nottingham City Council recently passed a similar motion. This is a treasury management issue, specifically relates to the responsibility of the managers of the pension fund to invest ethically, as set out on page 119, particularly under item 1, which talks about funds are invested are consistent with financial duties and responsible investment policies. And therefore I'd like to reiterate my full and total support for this recommendation. Any questions or comments? I've got Councillor Carr first, and I'll go to Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think you, to coin a phrase from you earlier, I think we have a moral responsibility to make sure that we don't have any of our council money contributing to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, and as well as the everyday horrors we also see in the West Bank. I think not too long ago I saw a Palestinian family forced off their land by a settler at gunpoint. I think yeah, we need to make sure that we make a stand and show that we don't want any of our council money going towards stuff like that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else before I go to other members? Councillor Owen, did you want to come in on this?
Yes, I do. I, quite frankly, was appalled when I saw this on the agenda. We're talking about Israel's crimes against the Palestinians. We seem to forget the 1,200 or so Israelis that were murdered in cold blood. This is all one-sided. It seems to me that it's divisive. It's certainly anti-Semitic, and it's verging on racist. And I can see no reason why this proposal should not have gone to a full council meeting so that we could have had a full and proper debate on it with an appropriate vote at the end of it. We don't seem to like that sort of thing, going to have full council meetings where we can actually discuss having prepared in advance. The role of the pension committee is to maximise returns to pay the pensions of people, officers who have worked for many years in local government. And we should not, and you should not, be trying to play politics with that to try and score political points. This is totally an inappropriate motion to come to Cabinet. It would have been a totally inappropriate motion to have come to full council, but that would at least have been better when we could have debated it more fully. As I say, I was horrified when I saw this on the agenda, and I consider it to be a new low for Broxtowe Borough Council.
Thank you very much for that. I'm sure we've not reached a new low yet, Philip, as you'll find out with one of your members very shortly about racism. So before I continue, I'll go to Councillor Greg Marshall and then Councillor McRae.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's not. I was expecting that from Councillor Owen, but the deep irony is, of course, his two-sidism argument. Of course, he didn't utter a word against Broxtowe support for Ukrainian refugees, and indeed the schemes that we've done to support Ukraine's under conflict. The accusation of racism and anti-Semitism is, of course, singularly demonstrates his complete misunderstanding of the subject as well, and of course it is neither, and it's obviously a deep insult to fundamentally councillors who have been at the forefront of fighting racism and anti-Semitism in Broxtowe for decades and decades. I include the leader of the council in that. Of course, I don't know whether he doesn't know or he's conveniently forgetting that when the Broxtowe Alliance members were still members of the Broxtowe Labour Party, we were one of the first Labour groups in the entire country to issue a statement on the crisis in the Middle East, and indeed that very, very clearly set out our categorical rejection of the 7th of October attacks, and he conveniently has forgot that. However, indeed, of course, our support for the Palestinian people was one of the factors that directly led to many members being, of course, blacklisted from standing as county councillors in the authority. So that was a devastating situation for many of our councillors who have got long and proud histories of fighting all types of racism, and for you to try and divide that is totally irresponsible and totally incorrect, and certainly not backed up by evidence or indeed the actions of many of the Broxtowe Alliance councillors.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Richard McRae.
Yeah, I've I've had loads of people trying to explain things like this to me, and for the life of me, I don't understand it all. I'm not going to sit here and say I do, so I'm going to have to abstain on this one. It's not that I support or don't support it, I just don't understand it. I've had so many people trying to explain things to me, and I still don't get it. Perhaps I'm a bit thick or something, I don't know. But so I'm not saying one's right and one's wrong or this and that. I just genuinely don't have enough information. I don't understand it. So I'm going to have to abstain on that because I don't think it would be right me making a decision because I just don't get it. If that makes sense.
It does. So, Councillor Cook, Teresa Collins.
Thank you, Leader. I think, I'm not going to try and explain it to you, Richard, but I think ethical investment is extraordinarily important in any case. And not spending taxpayers' money on not investing in individuals' pension funds or anything. I'm not in the pension scheme, but if I was in the pension scheme, I would not want any of my money invested in any company that produced or sold arms that caused children to be killed. Nobody forgets any child or anybody else, in fact, that was murdered. And actually, it's not even brave of us. Councils across the country have voted for this very same thing, and we're behind the curve. I'm sitting here thinking, why have we not just done this earlier? I sat at home online watching the City Council's debate on this, and when they decided to vote for it, we're not always friends with the City Council at the moment, but we could be proud of them for that. And I think it comes down to the simple thing that nobody forgets murders. Nobody in this alliance, and this can't always be said the same for the other parties, is either racist or anti-Semitic. We are doing the right thing and ensuring that we support ethical investment, which we should do anyway. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Councillor Peter Bales.
Thank you, man. I'll just start, Richard. It was a very brave thing to say you don't understand something. I think often people nod along and agree with things that they don't necessarily understand. So that was a very brave thing to do. And Councillor Cullen, I thoroughly agree with you about being behind the curve. I can remember sitting when we were all friends. Councillor Ross Boffinger brought this forward probably about 15 months ago. And actually criticising the Israeli government for doing something isn't being anti-Semitic. It is criticising a government, their actions. So I don't get any vote, but what you said, Teresa, Greg and Richard, and what this proposal is saying is absolutely the right thing to do. We should be having ethical investments.
Thank you very much for that. It's much appreciated. Councillor Vanessa Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support this recommendation as well. And thank you, Councillor Bales, for mentioning our good colleague, Councillor Ross Boffinger, who was instrumental in pushing us forward and keeping us on this path to get this done, because we have talked about it many times as a group, and it is something that a lot of us feel very passionately about. I think, when it's really hard, isn't it? When you see the news day in, day out, and you see this continuing, it's really easy to switch off to it at a certain point because it's just not stopping, and your daily life carries on here. But it's never ending for people in Gaza and people in the West Bank who are still dealing with, we're years into this now, and it's just relentless, and it's now expanding. Israel is pushing US around Iran and all of those areas. I work with a lot of students, international students from areas like Kuwait, Qatar, the Middle East. I've met students who've been personally affected by the situation in Palestine and Gaza as well. These are people at the end of the day who are just trying to live their lives, and a regime doesn't think they deserve to do that. And there's no way that we can support that in any way. And it's no different from actions that were taken against apartheid South Africa. You know, this kind of thing was standard along in a lot of places at that time, and this is the same kind of action. It's pretty much all we can do as a borough council. There isn't much more that we have the power to do in this chamber, but what we can do, we should do, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. For me, of course, it's a very personal issue because where some of the bombings taking place in the Gulf, I actually worked in 1984 from Duran to Dammam, right the way down to Ras Torana, which is the largest port in the world, where some of the bombings taken place in this last week, and it's been like going back in time for me to 1984 or 85 when I was working out there. So it's a very personal thing. But to pick up the point, I accept people have the right to disagree with what was put forward, whether it's myself or others. I never decry anybody, but I think in this case, Councillor, you are wrong. We have a moral obligation to stand up and fight for our communities. We oppose racism in all its forms. You know, we oppose sectarianism. We oppose anybody else inflicting their ideology on people with all our voices. That is a solemn responsibility of anybody who believes in democracy. Anybody. It's not just about what the council can do, it's what we all should do. We all have a moral responsibility. There are somebody's children, it's somebody's mother, it's somebody's father, somebody's brother. And I always say to people, when I saw what I saw in the Middle East when I was out there, how would you feel if your children were murdered in front of you? How would you react before you start lecturing me on the morality of whether you should ethically invest in states like currently is in Israel? And I do feel sorry for the Israeli community. We work closely with them in Broxlow as well, particularly after Councillor Marshall pointed out the Palestinian attacks that took place and the 1,200 people that were killed at the concert. You know, we do stand on morals, we do stand on our morality, we do fight against all things that oppress people's human rights to live with freedom and dignity and respect. And consequently, consequently, colleagues, not a moral lecture from me tonight, but it is a deeply held personal issue for me as well, that we must oppose and be prepared to stand up against all forms of racism, sectarianism, and the crushing of people in a democracy and freedom. And my final comment on this, for message for the American government, this will not make the Epstein files go away. Any further questions or comments?
Yeah, just a brief and I suppose I've grew up in a lot of this as well, where my parents came from, Bob. But there's good and bad in every race, and what we need to do is any little thing that we can do as a council or whatever, all together, or just help that more good in the world than the bad. Just any little thing will always help.
Thank you very much for that. Any further questions or comments? If not, the recommendation has now been moved and seconded. Please show clearly. All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? Just one abstention. Recommendation is approved. And we'll give you an update when we've had conversations with the county. And bear in mind, we are not the pension investment, but we will be stressing, and certainly I will stress the need to ensure transparency and ethical investments across the county council pension fund administration. So your next, next item on the agenda, I've got two people who are declaring interest in this on capital grants. Thank you very much for that. There are five grants that we're putting forward tonight. I'll go straight to Councillor Marshall. We're going to tend to deal with all five together. Right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The papers are set out on page 125 with the list of the grant aid proposals on page 127. They are to satisfy the application for grant aid, you have to meet the council's corporate principles and criteria. There is an assessment process which, when completing the form, allows us to marry those. So all of these are either meeting the principles that we set out and the values of us as an authority. Some have, of course, had previous grant awards. Where there's a grant award of greater than £5,000, there's also a service level agreement which attaches to that about how that money is spent as well. So I support all of those five organisations in their entirety, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. I'll second that. And just can I just add the tremendous success of the DH Lawrence Music Festival in the past, which is it's brought in thousands of people to Eastwood. It's astonishing the number of people that come in for the music events, you know, in Eastwood. If you've never been, I thoroughly recommend it. Music might not be quite to your taste sometimes. Some of you have no taste, and particularly those of you who live in the south of the borough. However, we're trying to educate in culture and arts. It's a long job, but we'll get there. But any questions or comments that anybody wishes to make? Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question just on the Kimberley Swim Club application. I know I've spoken to one of the committee members and they said they're looking at other funding elsewhere. I just wanted to ask when would be the next date where they could make an application, just to give them that reassurance, just because their financial issues are ongoing, so it would be good to give them that reassurance.
We are in the process, I hope by next cabinet meeting in April, that we'll be making a formal submission, seeking permission to make a formal submission for the bid for the north of the borough, for the Eastwood Health and Leisure Hub. And I hope then that but by that time we will be in a position to give you an update on where we are with all services. So I've had the session today with some of our economic development team. That report will be brought to April cabinet, and it will be ready for full submission.
But just while that's ongoing, because obviously we would need to build that, and that would be a bit of process. When would be the next state that we'd be able to make a grant aid application? Yeah. Just to give you reassurance.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Carr. Fundamentally, an organisation can make a grant aid application at any time. There's no barrier to that. All I would say is you can see by the relatively low value that they've applied for this time that, you know, I don't think the cash value that's been awarded would be a barrier to future applications, which will be considered, of course, on their merits, but they can apply at any time to do that as well, and that will be considered accordingly.
I don't want to spend finances money all the time. Good to say no, it doesn't normally stop him, but so recommendations and seconded that we take all five together. Please show clearly that all those in favour. Again, that's unanimously agreed. Can somebody bring back the two members? Item 5.6 is a capital grant request for the Royal British Legion Beast and Social Club, set out on pages 133 to 136. It's a decision that we're asked to resolve accordingly. Move straight to the finance portfolio holder.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Much like the last batch, although the difference here is this is a capital grant aid request by the Royal British Legion. Again, having to meet the principles and values of Broxtowe. They've had some problems with the roof, and it would be really helpful if we could make a grant aid request to help support them. I think they kind of relatively undersell themselves on page 136. I mean, it's a fantastic community venue, hosting a number of very kind of like active groups and organisations. The Civic Society meet there and hold events. The Nottingham Jazz Orchestra, which is a absolutely remarkable organisation. And before you say, "Oh, bloody hell, I'm going to oppose it then because you don't like jazz," I'd challenge you to go and listen to it, and you won't be able to stop your foot from tapping. And of course, it is the base, the start-off point for the Remembrance Day parades, and indeed the reception where they come back at the end of there. So they kind of undersell themselves a bit. It is a fantastic asset. I'm happy to support the recommendation in full on page 133.
Yeah, I'll second the recommendation. Any questions or comments? No, if not, then I go straight to the vote. Capital grant is requested. All those in favour? Again, that's unanimously agreed. Moving on to the next item is a grant aid request from parish and town councils. Starting on page 141. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Another capital grant aid request, this time from Stapleford Combined Services, who kind of set out their contributions on page 100.
You're right, Greg.
You're right, it's me that got it wrong.
Sorry, yeah. Set out their contributions on their contributions to the community on page 139. This request is for a small capital grant for some of the banners for contributing those history that complement the history of the fallen banners, which was so successful in last year. Was it last year or the year before? Last year, I think it was. So I'm happy to fully support this application as well, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. I'll second that. Any questions or comments? And you're right, the banners look absolutely amazing. It's something that I want us to do in Eastwood as well. So, all those in favour? That's unanimously agreed. The final one in this section tonight is from Town and Parish Councils, starting on page 141. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, this is the final one on this kind of batch of agenda papers, Chair. This is a grant aid request from parish and town councils. It's for Orsworth and Cossall Parish Council, and it's these are my words, like a match funded kind of grant application for for some signage, village gateway signage at Orsworth and Cossall, and they've asked fairly for a 50% contribution towards that, which I'm happy to support, Chair. It's recommendation fully.
Thank you very much for that. I'll second that. Any questions or comments? No? If not, I'll move straight to the vote then. All those in favour? Then that's unanimously agreed. Moving on to page 147, which is item 5.9, complaint self-assessment approval. The complaints officer is here tonight to give a brief rundown, but basically this is an update on the existing policy as it stands.
Through you, Chair. So every year we have to complete a complaint self-assessment against the Housing Ombudsman's complaint handling code. So this is this year's submission for the council. The code hasn't changed, so we are still compliant within the parameters that the Housing Ombudsman set out. So it's just a continuation of our complaints policy against their code. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
The recommendation is asked to resolve tonight that the self-assessment form be approved. I move that from the chair.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? If not, then move straight to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimously agreed. Moving on now to page 177, which is the irrecoverable arrears set out on page 177 to 182. Mr Sudlow, do you want to introduce the item, please?
Thank you, Chair. As members will be used to seeing irrecoverable arrears come through normally at the point of an exemption due to the personal data that's withheld in it. However, on this occasion, there's no personal information and members aren't actually being asked to write anything off at this moment in time because there was no debts over the £7,500 limit. But we just wanted to give members information about what has been going off during the year. So, under the delegated authority, the interim deputy chief executive has the authority to write off the debts under £7,500, which they've done. They total £262,633.67. There is a breakdown of how that all equates in respect of the service areas. I think it is important for members to note that there has been an exercise conducted in respect of penalty charge notices on parking. And that value comes to 22,769. There is a table in the report that shows you the breakdown for each year that relates to, but that is a one-off exercise to get ourselves into a position where it's manageable going forward, and they will be reported in the future irrecoverable arrears reports. But as I said, members will be used to seeing this kind of report, but it is just a noting report this time. Happy to take any questions there.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Yes, Andrew.
Chair, there's £134,487.83p of council tax write-offs. Can we get a reassurance that these are so far behind that there's no realistic prospect of them being recovered? Because £174,000 is, by anybody's estimation, a reasonable amount of money that we could do some good with. So, is that money that is definitely unrecoverable?
They remain on permanent record, possibly for those, but Mr Sudlow will explain.
Yeah, it's a good question. What we do is we go through a whole raft of recovery action. I won't go into lots of detail, but just to give you a bit of an overview, is if we can't recover it in the normal means through council tax, we go and get what we call a liability order through the magistrates court. From that point of view, is that opens up extra opportunities for us through things like the enforcement agents or charging orders on properties and even to appoint committals and things like that. We will go through every opportunity we can to recover that debt before we propose it for write-off, so to speak. Anything that is written off is always on our record still as a possible return, so we can write it back on at any point if we feel it's necessary. So just to give members reassurance, is that 174,000 that's identified there will be across a number of years, going back potentially 15 to 20 years worth of council tax, whereas we've tried and we've tried and we've tried, and we've just been unsuccessful at that point in time. But we would obviously always try to recover wherever we can.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? If not, report duly noted. If we move on then to economic development and asset management, first one tonight is housing multiple occupation and Article 4, set out on pages 183 to 236. It's an extensive document. I've got Mark Thompson here tonight from planning, who's led part of the consultation through JPAD with neighbouring authorities to try and get a consistent approach. I particularly want to draw your attention, if I can, to recommendation 2, which talks about the consultation on the proposed Article 4 areas is carried out for 6 weeks. And those additional areas are Eastwood, Kimberley and Stapleford. Recommendations on page 183, I move from the chair.
I'll second
that.
Second that. Mark, anything you want to add to the report at this stage?
Probably just a few points just to highlight from the report, if that's okay, Chair. Just to highlight that there's 2 parts. One in terms of core recommendations. The first 2 relate to the Article 4 areas, and the third relates to updating the existing HMO SPD. The report in terms of for the Article 4 areas was considered by Policy Overview Working Group at the start of the year. Considered a number of options related to the Article 4 areas. Option 3, which is outlined in the report, where we introduce Article 4 areas for Eastwood, Kimberley and Stapleford, and to extend the existing Article 4 area in Beeston was the preferred option by the majority of members, but with the caveat that they wanted us to review the boundaries which we'd put forward to Policy Overview Working Group, because they were considered too arbitrary based on ward areas. So we've updated the report accordingly. It's just important to note too that national planning policy does state that the need to apply to the smallest geographical area possible, and there is the potential for the Secretary of State to amend an order or to remove an order, although that happens very rarely, but it's just worth sort of bearing in mind that in terms of where we have to be robust in terms of the boundaries we're putting forward. It's also just to raise that the compensation would be payable if we introduced it immediately. That's why there is this 12-month period which we have to provide, and the risk of compensation is very high in terms of it, because any landowner would be able to apply for potential sort of loss of earnings if they said they were potentially looking at converting their property within that period. So it could be quite significant financial risk to the council if we did an immediate order. That's why we strongly recommend that 12-month notice period is applied. And then just in case, in terms of the HMO SPD, again, some recommendations from Policy Overview Working Group in terms of just outlining some of the relationships with HMOs and purpose-built student accommodation in Beeston, where you have some of those relationships and need to take that into account. And also it just needs updating because they're very much based on the existing Beeston Article 4 area. And if the new Article 4 areas are introduced, then we want to make sure it's very clear that it doesn't just apply in Beeston. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for that introduction, Mark. Again, it's very much appreciated. I've got a number of people who've indicated wish to speak on this item. First of all, I've got Councillor Vanessa Smith. And then
Thank
Ben
you,
Richard
Chair.
and then yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think it's overall a good suggestion to expand the Article 4 areas, and obviously we've already experienced that in our ward in Beeston Central, and in parts of Beeston North, where you know, the number of HMOs did reach a saturation point that was causing issues for local residents, in that we didn't have the right mix in the community. And it's always been about having a balance in communities, because HMOs have got a role to play, particularly in the ridiculous private housing market that exists currently. For some people, it's the only affordable option is to be part of an HMO, and we wouldn't want to, you know, there's no intention from any of us to remove that entirely, but it's all about maintaining that balance so that communities remain communities, you know. So, you know, students and young people who are working can still come to an area and contribute and benefit from everything we've got to offer, but we also still, you know, have space for families and older people, and, you know, all the other groups of people that make up our society. So I think it's a good move forward. Obviously we learnt a lot of lessons from what happened in Beeston Central, and you know, it wasn't an easy process, and it does take time. We're seeing benefits of it now with applications coming through and being able to look at, you know, what's around them and things. So I think what I would just say is I'm happy to support it, but just maybe a little bit of a word of warning to members from other areas. If this comes in, it isn't an overnight fix, and that HMOs aren't going to go away completely. We don't want them to. Then they're not going to go away overnight either. But it does help to keep that balance in communities. So I'm fully supportive of it.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Councillor Richard McRae.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's something I fully support as well, and I'm glad to see Stapleford on there. I'm just a little bit concerned for places like Morbridge Lane. It's parking. That's the biggest problem for us in Stapleford. So places like Morbridge Lane, and then I'll say the Stapleford North Ward, mainly around the estate between Braddon Avenue, Melbourne Road and that. But I'm guessing you can't just pick little bits like that, can you? It's got to be a bigger thing like this. But yeah, that's my only worry, is that it might force it into other areas in Stapleford. But I am glad to see something on here, and I do fully support it.
The point we're making is that the area has to be defensible in terms of the area that we choose. You can't just say, we'll do Stapleford, we'll do this, and this. Unfortunately, the law doesn't permit you like that. And when we're finished, I'll come up and I'll ask Mark as well to sum up a debate that we've had today around the future of children's homes. I've moved a recommendation in JPAB today, it's been accepted, and I'll make reference to that in a second. Councillor Bunn?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really pleased to see this here. Not so much for the extension, because my ward is already covered by the Article 4, but for that point 3 around the updated SPD that supports this. I think there's a lot that we've learned about the rules that we need around HMOs and getting those in place. And this is an opportunity to revisit that guidance and make sure that it is fit for the future. And I know residents in my ward will have lots to say about it. One of the things I'm really pleased because this is something that I've been pushing for basically since I was elected, and I know that the planning team will be very happy because it will mean that I will stop asking them about it.
Make them very happy.
Yeah, that's one less person anyway. The other thing that I want to say, though, I just want to be very clear, and my fellow councillor Vanessa has just touched upon this already. This is not like against people that live in HMOs. This is not anti-student legislation. Students are a really important part of our Beeston community. I was a student. I've stayed, become a councillor. You know, we do become part of that community. But what's really important is that we don't allow foreign developers to come in here. Do inappropriate developments that basically like take over an entire street, as councillor just said. So, too many houses with big extensions, and then there's a lack of parking and capacity for that. There are other problems to do with like overcrowding. It's making sure that, as a council, we are trying to be as proactive as we can to make sure that we've got the powers we need to ensure that communities are balanced, supportive, and also, pleasant for everyone that lives there, whether they are living in the HMO themselves, which is also another really important this legislation. It looks at those space standards within the HMOs. It looks at the way in which they're being built to make sure that we're not having crowded properties with people being forced to live in substandard accommodation. So I just want to make it very clear that this is not designed to be against people living in HMOs. We understand that people do need to live there, and they're a really important part of that housing mix. But we do want to make sure as well that when people are living in HMOs and when people are living around HMOs, and all of our communities are remaining like welcoming and good places to live. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any further questions or comments, Councillor McGrath?
Thank you, Mel. Mark, just a couple of questions, mate. So, what you said was that if we go for the Article 4 after a vote, it will take 12 months before we can implement it. Well, on that as well, I'm just concerned about the areas, about the makeup of some of the areas you've bordered, especially in Stapleford, because if you look to the top end, especially around Russell Drive, New Eatons and all that, there's some very big houses. I'll say big, and most of them were council built many years ago, which would leave it open, as you pointed out, to developers to move up there and do what we're trying not to stop, we're all trying to deal with properly. And the other thing as well, when hopefully we get the Article 4, in other words, can we extend any of the areas? Richard mentioned some places in the north, Morbridge and all that. There is Pasture Road, there's some houses that's open there to be developed into HMOs, right? And the other area that concerns me is if we get this Article 4, will you, Mark, or somebody from the planning go around and explain to the people what it actually entails, what it does? I'm sure you'll get a good response from the consultation, but it's hard for people to understand, A, what permitted development is, which has been a problem, especially around the centre of Stapleford, right? And I'm sure you've had many calls, and as Gabby said, I'm sure they've been on the phone to you all the time. But once we get that Article 4, is it possible that we could have a bit of a roadshow explaining to the people what is actually what? Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Councillor Owen, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I think this is very much a step in the right direction, and I've been asking for this expansion to take place for some time. It's a little disappointing that we've not been able to cover the whole of the borough, and I understand from what Mr. Thompson was saying the reasons maybe why not, although it would have been nice perhaps to have gone for it and let the Secretary of State say, no, you've got to cut it back, but there we are. Because it's not, I've looked at the figures on page 234, and clearly there are one or two areas where and we know the problems, particularly in Beeston. You're covering Kimberley, no problems with that, but there are only 3 at the moment. And clearly you perhaps don't want any more. But there are other areas of the borough with low numbers which are excluded from this, and we're not going to have that same control, and I find that particularly disappointing. I wanted also to ask what the relationship might be now with Airbnbs, because this is, as far as I'm concerned, another difficult area. Some months ago now, I was called to an Airbnb on the Paddocks, which is the next road to us, and they are 4 and 5 bedroomed houses there. And there's an Airbnb there. In fact, some of you may know of it because it's where a stabbing took place some years ago. And the residents of the Paddocks were saying to me that there were up to 12 people living in this Airbnb, and they had been there for some time, and the amount of rubbish that had collected was pretty awful. And I left it with officers to sort out from that perspective, and also what they could do about what I consider to be a misuse, and I've had no further complaints since. But I don't know whether this is happening in other parts of the borough, on what we may be able to do regarding Airbnbs that are perhaps being used as HMOs on the side.
Do you want to answer that specifically, Mark, or do you want to give you a bit more time?
Probably both. I can answer, a short answer, but I think I might provide just a bit more detail in writing potentially as well. But I think there were proposals being put forward in terms of for Airbnbs to be introduced into a new use class. So it would be a C5 use class, which would give councils more control in terms of planning requirements for them. So if we could potentially remove, similar example to HMOs, remove permitted development rights, so they would require planning permission for them. That's still in, I think, I was just looking now in terms of draft legislation, so it hasn't been sort of taken forward yet, but I can check in terms of the timeframes, in terms of when that might be brought forward. The example you gave in terms of where, if an Airbnb starts to become a more permanent source of accommodation, that is still, a potential breach of planning, so will be investigated accordingly whether that does constitute, if it's operating as a HMO, then that's different in terms of it operating into a C3 use class. So each case is slightly different, but it's certainly something nationally which has been looked at in terms of introducing additional restrictions for those changes of use where they're being used as a Airbnb. And there's obviously areas where elsewhere in the country where it's a much more common issue than maybe in Broxtowe, but I'm aware it's still an issue.
And to answer your question why we didn't apply for the whole of the borough, because that's exactly what Gadsden Borough Council did, and the whole lot was rejected. And so we consider that the legislation specifically relates to certain areas within, and rather than the entirety of the borough. So we didn't want to get a refusal. What we needed to get over was control in certain areas as soon as possible, and that was for a 12-month period. But from today we had an in-depth discussion at JPAB today about the use of children's centres. Instead of bringing children's homes in particular into planning each time, I've asked for a proactive approach from County Council to ensure there's a better relationship between the planning department and indeed Notts County Council social services and children's services on the need to provide those facilities within the communities. We saw some appalling statistics today related specifically to places like Ashfield, where I think it was 61 out of 70 people are not even placed within the county. So I've asked for a planning statement to be made and delivered across the JPAB area to look at ways in which you can utilise the planning system to try and bring those forward in areas of need, rather than responding reactively to a planning application, to actively, proactively set out a programme of adopting children within their communities in proximity to where they've got family support, where they've got access to education, health and other services, rather than having to place them across other counties in other parts of the country. So that I hope will be a big step forward, and it will go some way to reducing the horrendous costs of transportation within social services, which quite frankly is detracting from service provision. So it means accepting a responsibility, but I believe we have got a responsibility to those people who are placed in care for a variety of different reasons, to ensure that they are brought up within their own community and have the opportunity to access services and the facilities and family support within an area rather than sent outside the area. So instead of just saying, no, bring all your IMOs to council, we'll do what we can to restrict them, what we're suggesting is a much more positive and proactive approach to actually planning this in, particularly into new developments and Section 106 developer contributions, to actually bring into the most vulnerable members of our community, bring them, I think, much safer within their own community rather than placing them in other parts of the country. I hope you'll all agree with that. It was accepted by all members today, Rushcliffe and Ashfield especially. Any further questions or comments? If not, then the recommendation is moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimously agreed. Mark, when will the consultation start, the 6-week consultation period?
So the 6-week consultation on the SPD will start period going, it not being called in terms of a cabinet decision. The Article 4 direction is currently being prepared in conjunction with the legal team. We hope that would be at the same point next week, but if not, it will be probably
as soon as possible.
As soon as possible after. It's just there's slightly more paperwork involved in that, but they've been drafted, but they're being checked by legal.
Excellent news. Thank you very much for that.
Chair, Mark, is it all right if I slot that in say for town council?
Yeah, they're all the cabinet papers are being published, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on then to item 6.2, which is the Old Brewery site Kimberley on pages 237 to 200.
Chair, do you not have a vote for the IMO?
Sorry, yes, I've done it.
I did the
Sorry,
vote.
I thought we'd done it.
You have done it.
Oh, sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, we have done it.
Sorry.
Come on, Dolph, wake up.
Stay with it. I missed it.
Pay
Just
attention.
didn't quit.
Yeah.
I
Brewery site Kimberley set out on pages 237 to 240. And I'm sure you're all aware of the circumstances regarding this development site that's in the hands of the official receivers. And obviously it's an opportunity, we see it's an opportunity to potentially develop phase 3 of the site. What I've got tonight from you is I've got the Assistant Director responsibility for asset management and our housing delivery officer here tonight, who will give an update and presentation on why we're asking for this work to be carried out. And I've also asked to indicate from Housing Department the kind and sort of development that we will seek your approval for bidding. I want to draw again particular attention to recommendation 3, which states if the survey merited further work, preparation of bid to purchase a site subject to budget approval, contract independent valuation be approved, and I'll ask that to be delegated to the Chief Executive in conjunction with the Leader and Deputy Leader of the Council. Over to you, Darren, but the recommendation, sorry, I'll move the recommendation from the Chair. I was just hoping Greg would be back. Was it seconded?
I'll second it.
Back, yeah. Seconded. So before I go to other members, I just want to point of clarification from our asset management, housing delivery, and then I'll come to members.
I'm going to defer to Fraser. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Darren. We, upon being informed that the development had gone into administration, we sought cost estimates from 2 specialist companies, a company of quantity surveyors and ground investigation engineers, to find out what exactly the problems would be if we were to consider making an offer to purchase this land. The piece of land has an existing planning consent for 25 dwellings and has not been worked upon at all. It's known as Area 3 in the scheme, and it comes with an obligation upon any owner to carry out very detailed repair work to buildings known as the malt kilns, and the details of that, the repair work, are in the supplementary document, the section 106 document to the planning consent. So we were able to point the consultants in the direction of that report and for them to look at the details. So what came back was 2 quotes for fees plus another indicative quote, which is halfway down page 238, and it looks as though it's £2 plus VAT. Suspiciously cheap. It's obviously actually £2,000. So what we're asking Cabinet to resolve is that a budget of £18,000 for the initial survey work is granted. It includes those 2 quoted sums plus an estimated £10,000 for the PAS 128 survey, which has been recommended as a secondary form of investigation. And as the chair notes, if the survey merits further work, then we can look at doing further work to obtain evaluation for the site, perhaps look at an architect's report, if we could put another planning application in to get a larger number of units on the site. But before we do that, we need to know what problems are in the ground, what the estimated cost of doing these necessary works, which is incumbent upon every owner, and what the value of the site would be to ourselves.
Thank you very much for that. Darren, do you want to come in as on the back of that?
No, just to say, obviously, this was a hastily prepared report for Marks to Fraser for pulling that together. Obviously, there's a lot of unknowns at this moment in time, so we're hoping that tonight we might be able to move forward and fill some of those blanks and get to a best position in terms of understanding the site. We'd also like to understand a little bit more about the issues with the development of the first 2 phases of this site as well, which was developed by Futures Housing. And we need to make those inquiries as well as part of a wider due diligence process.
Thank you very much. Is everybody clear what we're asking for at this stage? Questions or comments from members? So yeah, I usually go cabinet members first, but I'll Councillor Greg Marshall there.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just that added bit. We had a public meeting about this issue as well, which was very, very well attended, and indeed, you know, you were talking earlier about in another discussion about the moral responsibility to do the right thing, and this is a very good example of that. There is, of course, no obligation for us as an authority to intervene here and take over, but what we're saying is we want to do the right thing, and we want to help those people who have been so badly let down. So in that sense, the first step, of course, is this allocation to allow some initial survey works. You were clear at the meeting, Councillor Radulovic, that this is not necessarily a panacea. In that sense, we have to assess what comes back from this survey work, but it's certainly the first step in progressing a very unfavourable situation, and we will try our very best to respond to that survey works and see indeed what can be done with following stages down the line.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Chris Carr, and then I'll go to Councillor Peter Bales.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Councillor Marshall said, this is the first step in us trying to resolve the issues on the site. Now that the receivers are in ownership of it, I think I think it's important that we look at the works that need to be done on phases 1 and 2. The remaining work there, given that there are residents already living on those phases, but there's also we need to look at the kind of capacity of the groundworks, because we start developing phase 3 and the capacity is not there, that is going to back up and possibly affect the previous phases. So it is it is about making sure that the residents on the site already aren't going to be affected by any further development, and that possibly if we can purchase the site, it means we can finish the works on phases 1 and 2, so that they are living on a finished area.
Thanks. I'll sum up very shortly. Councillor Peter Bales.
Thank you. Just some clarity around the wording of what you'll be voting on. I understand that there's the groundworks, the past surveys are being done to understand what the pipe works like, the sewers and everything else is like underneath. And there's the legal implications around what's included within doing the phase 3 works in line with the section 106 agreement that's already there. That covers the external areas, the communal areas. There's the malt kiln building, and there is the rumours, probably the best way to phrase it, regarding the Futures Home building. Is that Futures Home building included in what survey works is being undertaken? Because it doesn't read like it is. And also, a number of residents have contacted, I'm sure Councillor Carr's had the same thing, Councillor Cooper, Councillor may have had the same thing, about their snagging and their defects. Are any of those elements covered by the survey works that are being undertaken? Or is it purely the 106, the kilns and the phase 3 works?
Through you, Chair, it's purely the area covered by what's known as Area 3 in the planning consent, so that doesn't include any work or any investigation to the buildings that were completed during phases 1 or 2, or Area 1 and Area 2, as they're referred to, some of which are in the ownership of Futures Housing. What the survey would look at is the condition of the services which, as they meet Area 3 from either of these areas, and offer an opinion on their serviceability or otherwise, which we could be used to inform further work for Futures Housing.
Just to clarify, it doesn't cover phase 1 and 2 snagging issues?
No, it does not. No.
At this stage. Yeah, can we just make that clear though? Because the point that I raised, particularly at the public meeting, is the moral obligation on the council. Now, it's in the hands of the receiver. If we get approval tonight, which I'm assuming all cabinet members will see on the vote, will be supported. If the survey comes back that the integrity of the drains and sewers, etc., and the covering of the section 278 on the road sewer resurfacing, the landscaping, etc., comes back to the council, then the council, as well as making an offer to the receivers, can pressurise, in my opinion, the receivers to put aside a certain amount for fixing phase 1 and 2, the outstanding snagging list. That only becomes part of our moral responsibility should we be the successful bidders to phase 3. Now, I've had long talks with our housing teams about the need in Kimberley. I just want to very, very quickly go through the needs in Kimberley for you. There are approximately 1,350 people on our housing waiting list, of which over 300 people are in preference in Kimberley. If you work that out very quickly on top of your head, you'll see that 5% of the population has almost 22% of the entirety needs in Broxtowe. Coupled with Eastwood, you have almost 50% of the entire waiting list is contained within Eastwood and Kimberley area, that narrow section, that 2 mile stretch. The need is there without any argument. What we do need though is to understand, and it's me that's insisted on the surveys, as our staff will tell you, the integrity particular, about the ability to develop phase 3, about to continue with the landscaping, about the completion of the roads, etc. If that survey comes back and we are committing £18,000 of public money into that, then the council will bid through Homes England, and we expect to be successful for phase 3, and then obviously we will look at ways in which we can pressurise and take that more responsibility for the receiver to ensure that the rest of the site is up to a standard that acceptable to the residents and to the borough and to environmental health. Is that is that okay? Anybody misunderstand or doesn't understand? Councillor Owen?
Yes, it's not surprising that people are asking for Kimberley. In a survey not so long ago, it was regarded as being one of the best up and coming places in Nottinghamshire. So that's that's fair enough. Yeah, I'm not quite clear on what has been said tonight. I'm not involved now, no longer being the county councillor, but at over the 8-year period, I got numerous complaints, and the existing phase 1 and 2, the existing properties that come off the main road, that are accessed from the main road. The road is unmade, the street lights certainly weren't working, etc., drainage and what have you. Are you saying that if Broxtowe Borough Council successfully purchases the land to build out phase 3, that all of that work, that remedial work, will be completed?
Essentially, yes, because I don't know how much you know about building sites, but the county holds a bond on what's called a Section 278 bond on completion of the highways and street lighting. We don't know what that bond is at the moment. These are form part of the investigation. Despite our members inviting the county council's local area to that meeting at Kimberley, they didn't attend. And so we weren't able to ask them directly about for their input into helping us resolve it. But that will form part of the investigation. If that bond and the integrity of the bond is in place, then there is no reason why when phase 3 is finished, the whole lot won't be finished. No reason whatsoever. It's a question of them whether it's adopted or private. But at this stage, all we're asking for is to ensure that what we're going to bid for Homes England funding and from the receiver is structurally sound, capable of being developed, and does not endanger the public purse or exposes the public purse to unnecessary risk. Is everybody clear on that? And as I say, the staff will tell you I probably drove them all mad because I do know a little bit about works. To ensure, say, what we are going to bid for is the integrity will make site be developable without any nasty surprises halfway down the line. That's what we're asking for. Everybody clear? Any further questions or comments? If not, please show clearly all those in favour. For the record, that is unanimously agreed. Next item on the agenda is the Harvest Housing Service Improvement Plan, update on pages 241. Is it 241? You've got to get these numbered pages right. Sorry, page 241. Well, again, it's a noting report tonight. We're asked to note the report and the key activities aligned to revised housing service improvement plan. That's our recommendation. I'll go to Councillor Vanessa Smith first, and then I'll go to our asset management team. I've got both Darren and Andy Corshaw here tonight, as well as the housing assistant director.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so since we had the judgment from the Regulator of Social Housing, we made a commitment that we would bring regular updates to Cabinet about our progress against improving on the areas that we were pulled up on in that report. So this report is essentially just giving a bit more detail, first of all, about what our service improvement plan is, which we have updated since the regulator's judgment came out, but was was already in place and starting to be implemented before the regulator visited us. And hopefully, well, I know that we've got some good news to share in terms of numbers and progress against those targets. So we're here to present that and to take any questions on it as well.
Thank you very much, that. So, who's going first? I knew you were asked, Darren. You're going first tonight.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, just following on the inspection, we did take the opportunity to review our service improvement plan, and we're focusing on 5 key themes around strengthening our compliance, improving standards aligned to data quality, improving the implementation or continuing to implement actions within the asset management strategy and our housing strategy, and enhancing measures with regards to staff engagement. So, as Councillor Smith did mention there, we have made some progress. I'd just like to hand over to Rachel with regards to our tenant data, and then over to Darren with regards to the fire safety actions.
Okay, so just to provide an update in regards to the tenant data project, as I updated at last cabinet, this was something that we'd already identified and something we'd already started working on before the regulator inspected us mid-October. However, when they came in, the officer that we had working on this work had only been in post for a number of weeks, which were very early stages. So in the report, it gives the update that we'd now contacted over 1,800 of our general needs tenants. Actually, since the report's been written, we're sort of latest figures, we're now up to 2,005. So we're continuing to make that progress and getting through about 300 calls for a month. Phone calls is what we're focusing on at the moment. The next stage of this project is going to be going on to home visits for those people that we've not managed to update their records over the phone. Unfortunately for us, but fortunately for her, Julie, who's been in doing this work, has actually managed to secure some permanent employment elsewhere. So she will be leaving us on the 20th of March. However, today we've secured another interim officer to start work immediately. So although we will have maybe a slight delay with the sort of induction and training of that new officer, we don't think that's going to have an impact on the target that we've set ourselves of getting this work completed by the end of May. But there will be a slight delay, and we do expect maybe a slight dip in the numbers for the report for next month, just because we're going to have a change of officer who's going to be doing this work.
Thank you very much for that.
My bit now, if that's okay. So just in terms of fire safety, obviously at the last cabinet session, we spent quite some time discussing our position in terms of outstanding fire safety works, which was around just over 3,000 as set out within the housing regulators report, clearly too high and not satisfactory for anybody. Since then, a number of colleagues have been working across housing management and asset management to try and put together a plan, and within the report you'll see how the numbers kind of stack up in terms of the actual physical works to our assets and some of the management actions as well, and there is some detail around the type of work that we're looking at actually doing. In terms of the actual priority work, there is nothing in terms of a high priority in there, so that position is maintained, and our current position in terms of outstanding numbers is 2,844 actions. We now have 5 contractors on the procured and working on the estate, and we also expect our main fireworks contractor to deliver around another 900 actions within the course of this current financial year, so that's from now until the end of April. So we're looking at substantially reducing that down further. We have a number of contractors replacing doors which are on various order streams, so they'll be replaced as and when they arrive. Obviously you can imagine that everybody across the housing sector is currently trying to get hold of doors and things like that, because we're not the only ones in this position. So whilst I'm happy that we are in a better position, I'm still unhappy that the number is still where it is, and whilst we're making progress, we remain acutely aware of members' keenness and for us to up the pace, and rest assured we are continuing to do that. Thank you.
And just finally from myself, we are meeting with representatives from the regulator on a monthly basis to share progress and give assurance that we're implementing the measures to improve. And we've put an appendix into the report to give people more detail on the 25 actions aligned to the 5 key themes, and some narrative with regards to progress and next steps. So happy to answer any questions.
But again, stress to members that they are directly reporting to myself as well, as personally overseeing this. Any questions or comments? If not, then, if not, it's just a noted report, duly noted. Next item on the agenda is on item 8.1, which is Bramcote Hills Park Development Proposal on page 251 to 256. Potentially some exciting news for the Bramcote Hills Park. The recommendation, we asked for at this stage for a budget of £4,000 to do the commission of concepts, etc. I'll move that recommendation on page 251.
Second that. I think this is a really good example of how we start off with something and we continue to develop it and let it grow into something amazing. The Holocaust Memorial was a wonderful thing to start with when we commissioned a sculpture especially for that, and then out of that grew the idea that we could have that as a performing place. So within that walled garden, the first Hemlock happening began with Stan Heptonstall putting on his play, and we sat opposite the actual Hemlock stone on bales of straw, drinking wine and dodging the mosquitoes, and all the councillors went and a few other people. And from that, we've now grown into an event that is so big that we attract 6,000 to 9,000 people. And the area is now developed further as a result of doing a scrutiny, Sean doing his scrutiny on there, looking at accessibility. So from then on, we developed the idea of a sensory garden within there and accessible play equipment for the children and everybody who went there. And we've also have within there the ice house and the walled garden, which shows we've got heritage there. It's a very diverse site, and if we join together the quarry with it and look at all and link up all these 5 different nature reserves, we can have a 5-mile walk or a run, and incorporating the quarry we can even have a park run there. And what the place has always lacked has been toilets and a cafe, and many people over the years have looked into trying to do that, and we are actually going to do that. And this is what we're asking for now. We're looking for just £4,000 for a concept drawing so we can develop this wonderful project. The park itself is so diverse with so many opportunities and that lovely sculpture at the end of it, that with our imagination and creativity we can make something which will be a legacy forever. And the concept drawing is only £4,000, but the idea that we would have from the building would be we'd provide a visitor's place, sort of classroom and meeting place which 40 people could fit into it. It would have everything that we wanted it, like green living roof, solar panels, proper insulation and daylight, and everything that we would want from an environmentally friendly project. So from the 4,000, the concept drawing, we'll get a realistic idea of the cost of this project, and it might even go into millions, but we're ambitious and it's something worth doing. We've got 27 acres there, and it's a really good project, and I hope that we will support the initial 4,000.
Thank you very much for that. Emma?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So following on from Councillor Skinner, obviously we know since the adoption of Bramcote Quarry back last year, that together with the Bramcote Hills Park is becoming a real destination area for our residents. And one of the things that's always been picked up when we undertook a consultation or we undertake our park survey, which we do annually, it's residents have always said that they would like toilet facilities upon that site. Now, hopefully, the £4,000 to undertake the feasibility study will allow this dream really of both officers and residents and members to take shape and be completed within sort of the next 18 months, 2 years, which would be amazing. Just also in terms of the wider connectivity, the team have worked together to pull together a 5K walk, taking in 5 local nature reserves.
We'll be doing that.
And hopefully we will be able to put on, and the team again are looking at this, is to facilitate a park run in the area, which would be amazing. The team are also looking at something very similar up in the north as well, in terms of a walk around sort of key sites up there as well. I'm happy to take any questions.
The next cabinet will be about the north that we're looking to develop around the DH Lawrence Country Park and Trail, but that's for next month. This time we're concentrating on Bramcote Park. Is everybody clear what we're suggesting today? Yeah. I'll move then to Councillor Bourne.
Yeah, just on the walk, I'm happy to do the walk because I do about like 30% of it already, so it'll be nice to have a loop so I don't have to, because I hate going back the same way that I've gone, so I'm really excited about that, thank you. More specifically though, I think it's a really positive thing. Some of the things I was really pleased to see in there was the sort of commitment to passive house standards and really good environmental standards for the building as well. So it's building something that's not just suitable now, but will have that long-term durability, and also that I'll obviously do things like keeping running costs lower and making sure that it stays viable. I'm also really pleased to see, Councillor Skinner already touched upon it, like toilet provision around here has been like a subject of debate for a long time. I think it's about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years, that we looked at sort of the toilet strategy for the area, and that was one of the subjects that came up really strongly. Was we wanted to have that provision in the parks. It's really important for accessibility. There's lots of people that can't go to places if they can't reliably get to toilet facilities when they need them. So just on that, I'd ask that we look at making sure that the toilet is ways in which that it can, to ensure that there is accessible toilet facilities,
Absolutely.
not just when the building is open, but also making sure that they're changing places facilities if possible. It's something that we did in Beeston Town Centre when we brought in the toilets there, and it was very much welcomed by the people that need those services. And I'd like to say it is a commitment in our strategy that we will aim to do those wherever possible. And then finally, just I'm sure Millen is going to come in and tell me that this is all part of his plan already, but. That thing about extending the facilities at Bramcote, what Emma talked about there, about making this into a destination, really ties in with obviously EMCA's strategy for the East Midlands region about creating like tourist destinations and places for people to go. Are we going to be approaching EMCA to see once again if they'll actually fund some of the fantastic work that we're doing at Broxton Borough Council? I know, I saw your face there, Teresa, and we can try. Because I think this is exactly the sort of thing that they should be supporting. This is exactly the sort of thing that I'd be hoping to see MCA's mayor investing in, to be able to bring these facilities forward for local areas. So, we can ask, I hope. Thank you.
Okay, so any further members of Cabinet? If not, then Andrew.
Richard as well.
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Richard. I've got you written down here as well. I still missed you.
One of them days, isn't it? No, I think it's brilliant, and I remember many years ago, I think someone mentioned earlier, there was Stan Eptonstall, I think David Watts was involved, and a local resident, Sue Sambles, and other people. The website's still live actually, so it might be worth having a look on there to see some of the stuff that they'd come up with, and if that can be incorporated, it might help keep some costs down. They did work really hard, but unfortunately there was no money at the time, so it just fizzled out, didn't it? There's always been a need for some decent toilets on there. I can remember toilets being on there many years ago. They sadly got closed down. It was only a little one up near the cricket pavilion, if you can remember. But it would be nice if it could include something like somewhere where people can wash the dogs as well afterwards, because I think that's a thing people quite like. That place has always got people walking there with dogs. I think as a council, if we can invest in something like this, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, Bramcote Park, like all the other parks we've got all over Broxton, so I can't think of one that's not very good. They're all amazing, aren't they? Really good to see that there's a park run thing on possibility. It's being looked into, because that's really good. And maybe one day we might get some disc golf somewhere in Broxton, because that's something else we haven't got, and they've got it in Derby. We need one of them on one of our parks. But yeah, fully support this. It's really good, and I'm really looking forward to it as it evolves.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to speak in support of this as the ward councillor for this area. It builds on work my fellow councillors have been doing over many years to try and get toilets built on this site, and it's really important that we invest in the parks, particularly given the determination of this council and developers to brick over and concrete over every other area, green area around Bramcote Park. And I note with support but some amusement the green principles highlighted for this building, given the low quality of the housing being built on the field next door. So we thoroughly support this, and it represents an important opportunity for our community.
Thank you very much for that. Your support is absolutely essential to this project going forward. Emma, do you want to sum up on anything now? You're happy with everything that you've heard? Because I've got a question for you, actually.
Okay.
I don't ever remember telling you 12 to 18 months.
Oh, okay.
You know, perhaps I need to re-jog your memory tomorrow morning, but I certainly don't remember giving you 12 to 18 months. Everybody else is just laughing, by the way.
We will go as fast as we can. So yes, but no, very pleased that members are very supportive of this. I think it will be great for everyone and the area as well. But obviously, in terms of the green build, I think in terms of our principles, it would be foolish not to move forward with that. And we want to be seen as an exemplar site for the rest of other districts as well. So I'm glad that's been supported.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? If not, I'll proceed straight to the vote. All those in favour? Then that's unanimously agreed. Item 9.1 is a hate crime pledge on pages 257 to 278. I'm going to call in Councillor Gabrielle Bunn to introduce this item, but essentially the recommendation on page 257 I'll move from the chair.
I'll second that.
Gabrielle, do you want to speak to this item, please?
Yeah, so you know, as you can see, the items before you, page 257, and the pledge itself is on 259. And then after that, there are a couple of appendices that aren't changing, but they're there to give a bit of context to what we're looking at tonight in terms of our hate crime policy and hate crime strategy. And just to mention those that we are looking at improving those shortly, and also bringing them together into one document, which will be something coming through soon for people to be looking at. But like I say, so today what we're looking at is the pledge itself, which is on page 259. And obviously, I don't think anyone in this room will be unaware of the current context in which we're operating, and some of the things that are happening in our communities. They're happening internationally, they're happening nationally, and they're also happening locally. I mean, I think, you know, in my experience, Broxton in general has a really strong community, and the majority of residents are supportive and work closely together. We do have minor, minor. I think we have small elements causing what is not something that shouldn't be seen as minor or insignificant. And so that's why I think it's really timely that this is coming forward today, and for us to renew this hate crime pledge. And I think it's well worth everyone having a look at what we put in there as an organisation, the principles that we say that we stand by, particularly in reference to some of the other items on the agenda earlier tonight, because I think that showed us putting some of these things into action. So yeah, I'm very happy to support this, and yeah.
I hope as many members of the council will come to the signing of the hate crime pledge, because I have been concerned about the lack of attendance of some groups and representatives within the authority. It's essential that we demonstrate our total intolerance and unacceptability of all racism, and particularly with events that's in the Middle East, we need to be aware potentially of escalating conflicts, whether it's in the Jewish community or any other community. They need to be aware of, and I've already had lengthy discussions with our communications team, and indeed we will bring all members up to date if there are any further recommendations from the police in any escalations, tensions or conflicts within local communities. Councillor Richard McRae.
Yeah, no, this fully support this. You can't not do, can you? I chair Broxton Youth Homelessness, and we're a hate crime reporting organisation. So would it be possible that we invite the manager along as well? Because in the past we've come along and had the manager and some of the staff come and sign it. They met the mayor and all that kind of stuff. But if we could include them as well, I think the manager would appreciate that, and it just shows a bit of networking and the commitment of Broxley Youth Owners as well. Like I said, they are we are a hate crime reporting organisation. Thank you.
So if I can just come in on that briefly, actually, a conversation with Sarah Tidy about sort of the broader campaign that goes, we're planning alongside this and that event, and that's exactly one of the discussion points we had there, that we want to make sure that we are inviting members of the community, not just that organisation, but also the communities most closely affected by this and the organisations that work within it. This isn't something that is just, us, well, there is an extent to which it is us as a council making this pledge, but obviously we do that in partnership with a wide range of organisations, and it's really essential to tackling things like this that we do work collectively. So absolutely, I'll make sure that they're on the list, and also if there are other organisations that people would like to ensure are invited to that event, like I say, there is a list already, but I would not want anyone to be missed, so please do send any suggestions through to myself and Sarah. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments, Councillor Bowles?
Just a small point, item 2, having the word banter in there, personally, I think it's a horrible word and sort of plays down the importance of this policy, because banter has connotations that it's all jovial, and this in no way is jovial, but that's just personal opinion. This pledge, it's being signed by the council. Is it being sent round as an individual document to councillors, because we represent the council, and that first item, be mindful of the language used by our organisation, therefore us, I think very pertinent, bearing in mind some of the discussions that have taken place tonight, but also the discussions that take place in other council meetings, and the comments and language used by councillors is often inappropriate. So it might be being signed by the council, but it'd be nice to be seen that this is sent round to individual all councillors to sign themselves as well.
I'll double down on what I said earlier, that I hope all members, and I'm trying not to be overtly critical in public, but it'd be nice to see some of the members of other groups attending some of the Broxtowe functions that promote community cohesion and togetherness. Because at the moment that seems to be sadly lacking among certain individuals and groups within the authority. But you are all invited to the signing of the hate crime pledge, and I hope for once members will come forward and voluntarily sign the hate crime pledge. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, I get the gist of what Peter Bales is, Councillor Bales is saying, and I think maybe some clarification, but I think the point of the word banter is to ensure that it's not inappropriate banter and can't be passed off as banter to justify kind of personal. So maybe we can clarify that, but it's not to make light of the concept of banter when it's inappropriate. It's to kind of say, don't pass it off as that is the point, I think. But maybe that, by virtue of this discussion, it probably needs to just be made a little bit clearer.
Good. No further questions or comments. The recommendations then been moved and seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimously agreed. Item 10 is a Cabinet Work Programme. I move that from the Chair.
I'll second that.
We'll have on there.
No, there should be an April meeting.
Yeah, yes, April's not been included on this agenda, but that will have a number of standard items. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. You just referenced it there as a number of standing items, but probably need LGR update as a standing item fundamentally on future Cabinet Work Programmes.
Yeah, we're pulled in the extra meeting in April last simply because of the work programme and some of the need to develop some of our capital projects as soon as possible and update. So there'll be a further meeting of Cabinet. Is it the
14th?
14th of April. 14th of April. That's one for your diary. So other than that, the general principle of the work programme been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Then that's agreed. Now falls on me for the item 11, which is the exclusion of public and press. And I'll move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, public and press be excluded from the remainder of the meeting. Is that seconded?
I'll second that.
All those in favour?
Hopefully, very nice. Stream off.
Yep. We'll confirm when the live feed's disconnected.